All right. Thank you, Mr. Werkeiser. At this time, we do appreciate your testimony. We appreciate you being here. I know that's not the most fun thing to do, but we will begin a questioning, and I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. You've talked about the troubling aspect of this issue, but like I mentioned in the opening statement, I mean, going back to 1996, that's during the Clinton administration. Through 2008, that's a Bush administration. To 2014, that's the Obama administration. And I got to tell you, Mr. Werkeiser, when I first got elected, I can remember going, walking around Stephen F. Austin University, and they've done some great work in conjunction with the U.S. Geological Society. And I looked at the stuff from the USGS, and my thought, I mean, going back to high school, wow, the USGS, this is really quality stuff. And I got the high grade in science in my high school for, well, I remember seeing USGS, wow, this is really impressive. This is really quality stuff, as we talked about the gold standard. So it's really heartbreaking to think about all of the great work that's been done to build this phenomenal reputation of the U.S. Geological Society to come around to the point where we are now, where we've had years of just falsity and fraud, manipulating data. You get rid of one employee, and really it doesn't sound like there were a lot of consequences there. That's deeply troubling. If somebody's falsifying data, it ought to be a blight on their total reputation and their professionalism. But I come back to the question I mentioned in my opening statement. So to what end? Why the continued falsification and manipulation of data? Do you have an answer to the why? I mean, as a lawyer, I was taught never ask the question why, but I really, truly want to know.
I share your concern. I was appalled and devastated when I learned of this incident. Like you, when I was in school, I learned of the USGS through an article said the USGS was the best at what it does in the world. That made me want to become part of USGS. So I was deeply, deeply appalled when I learned about this incident. While I can't look into the mind of the analysts involved, what I can say is that with this instrument, when the raw information comes off of it, it often needs to be adjusted to comply with standards that are run.
Well, now, Mr. Werkeiser, we had heard that originally, that, well, you have to change it some because of the calibration. But then it turned out, we heard from USGS, well, that really doesn't explain all of the falsification that we got here. So I appreciate that position, but we heard that before, and then it turned out that really wasn't the proper explanation. So let's try again. You have some other explanation. Why?
So the issue is that those adjustments were well outside of established standards. So and while I can't look into the mind of the person,
now you've said that twice now, but the fact is you can ask the scientists. Did you ever ask these people, why did you do this?
Yes, they were asked why. Their explanation was that they felt those manipulations were justified when in fact they were not. And we looked at to see if there's a pattern of that manipulation. Was it consistently higher than the value should have been? Was it consistently lower than the value could have been? Were they trying to drive some agenda to falsify those data? There was no consistent bias in that information. Sometimes it was high, sometimes it was low. And in fact, the way the samples are submitted, there's no way for them to know what those samples are going to be used for, that the project is not identified. So I cannot explain exactly why, except from what they tell us, and it was in an effort in their minds to provide more accurate information, which is absolutely not the case.
That's total irony. You manipulate data in order to make it more accurate. That's totally incongruent. Well, what do you believe the long-term effects of USGS's reputation in the science field? I mean, you got university students that are now going, what are we supposed to do? This is totally bogus science here.
This is damaging to our reputation. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And so all I can do is to ensure that we rebuild and regain that reputation. The 4 steps I outlined before, bringing in the National Academies of Sciences, a very prestigious organization to evaluate our protocols to help us into the future, the establishment of our Strategic Laboratory Committee to look at all our assets, every lab we have, and the implementation of a QMS, quality management system, that will eventually encompass all of our laboratories across the USGS, will help to rebuild that reputation.
Has that been done?
The quality is underway.
Okay. All right. Well, my time has expired. I recognize